All right, welcome one and all to a long-delayed episode of Talk Gaming. This one's a little different. Well, it's not really different. It's kind of like the good old days when we used to do pre-recorded episodes of Talk Gaming. Like the first 12, I think, were all pre-recorded on my DSLR from like 10 feet away so I could get a little depth of field with the stock lens, and then I'd record it, and then I'd record there were like 4 pieces. I edited them all together, and it kind of worked, and it was fun. A lot of work, but then we switched to going live, and that was fun. We take questions, of course, we do all of that. It's a really engaged experience, and that will continue. But this week, I unfortunately am going to have to go out of town during our normal recording session, and it's not something I could control, kind of a family emergency. I know everybody says family emergency. I was watching a TV show, I forget which one, where they joked about that. It's like if you say family emergency, nobody can call you on it because it's like, oh, family emergency. Okay, I think it was Portlandia, if I remember correctly. But no, this is unfortunately an actual thing that I have to go and cross the box off. So I won't be here during our normal live streaming time, and so I decided to pre-record it. I would have live streamed it beforehand, but the issue is just that I didn't have time to announce this to get people ready and excited so that they would actually show up, and this is technically speaking a little bit easier for me. So that's what we're doing. And now I do want to just apologize to everybody. It's been a rocky week and a half or so, for a lot of different reasons. You know, whenever you and I've had time to kind of clear my head and not try to be so kind of pig-headed about a lot of stuff, because it's very easy to get personally offended, to get riled up, to stick your head in a hole and just reject everything. And I've tried to move on from the stuff that's happened in the recent past. I want to apologize to the people that were involved, but you know what? I'm looking to the future. All of the problems in question, I've done my best to resolve those issues so that there's no claim on them, there's no stake on them, there's no issue anymore. We're ready to move on and continue. And if you want to watch my content and criticize that stuff, because that stuff deserves criticism, I welcome that. It helps me grow as a creator and create better stuff. And as I said, I welcome that sort of thing, but I'm looking to the future. I am just sick and tired of looking backwards all the time. So we're going to move forward. We're going to continue. As many of you know, I have been doing YouTube for a while. I started out doing Blender tutorials on how to use Blender 3D software stuff, really boring videos, but I was doing like tutorials on that, and they did okay. Got my first 600 subscribers after like a year and a half of doing that, and we made progress, and we did it, and we were able to manage pretty consistent content with that. But I eventually transferred into gaming and made that a priority and did that, and then that's when I started to really find success. But in that process, I've made, at this point, probably thousands of videos, most of which, the majority at this point of which, I have deleted or are private or unlisted just because I'm not proud of them, because they were news videos way back when, so they're not really relevant anymore. There's no need for them to be up, and it just kind of clutters my catalog and library of videos. Plus, you get to a point when you, as I said, you're looking to the future, and you don't really want to be defined by your old content that you wouldn't make today, that you wouldn't be proud of today. And so you try to find a way to move on and shift away from it. And that's kind of where I'm at right now, where the long form videos, the critiques and stuff, I'm enjoying them. I'm enjoying making them. People are enjoying them and watching them, and I want to do more of those. But I've made videos in the past that I wouldn't really be proud of, and so I'll probably sometime in the near future go through my catalog and unlist a lot of those videos. So if you have a link, if they're on your favorites for some reason, then you can still watch them, but they will be you know, cleared out so that they don't pop up in suggested feed and stuff, just because my old videos kind of suck. So, you know, I'm willing to move on. You know, and plus not many of them did very well, so it's not like I'm losing a lot of views. But that, just a quick rundown on everything. I've got so much going on in my brain right now. It's a little intense, and I don't want to bore you with it. There's just a lot to handle. There may or may not be, and I'm sure there is currently, a slight voice desync on this camera where I'm talking and my lips don't match up exactly right. I'm sorry for that. I honestly don't know what's doing it. It was in the last video I recorded with this Pro, as Logitech claims, webcam. I'm not sure why it's doing it, but it's doing it. There's probably some delay. Maybe the fact that it's going to USB 3.1 is an issue. I thought that would help, but I don't know. I've got some reconfiguring. If you know why it might be doing that, let me know. But with all that said, there are a few things I do want to discuss, and these are comments that were posted to our Discord. Links, obviously, right there. You can go join. We have a great time. But I did want to talk about some of these questions just because we're not doing this live, and I want to be able to still address some questions that the community has offered. And yes, we have Don't Starve Together gameplay going in the background. Really fun party game. Highly recommend it. You can do some really cool stuff, LAN parties and all that. It's an easy way to burn a week of gameplay. You will be distracted. Now the audio desync seems really bad. I'm not sure what that is. I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry. Just ignore my face. But with that said, the first comment came off the Discord, and I want to address it. Specifically, this goes, LukiePoo, is political correctness going too far in the gaming industry? Examples such as Call of Duty World War II, with a quote from Deathstroke5700, who's another user in the Discord. Quote, Hitler's probably going to end up as a Brazilian bisexual, gender fluid transgender that identifies as Führer. And could you also talk about how they censored the swastika to be an iron cross? Now, this is a very hot topic, or a hot button issue for a lot of gamers, because you're talking about their hobby. You're talking about a passion of theirs. And whenever you start to taint somebody's passion with political discussions, with much of anything, whether it's politics, whether it's just drama in general, you're going to upset a fair number of people, and that's human nature. Now, I mean, for instance, if you loved cooking, you love cooking. That's all you do when you get home from work. That's what you're thinking about. You're going to be the next Gordon Ramsay, whatever. You're going to go, you're going to open your own restaurant. It's going to be great. That's all you think about. And then somebody comes in, they eat the dinner you made them, and they say, well, I wish there were more dates because this is very supremacist towards European food. So I don't like it, and you should be ashamed of yourself. Naturally, that's absurd because it's food, but what's sad is I could see that happening where somebody goes to an Italian restaurant or a Greek restaurant and is upset. It's kind of the same thing when you go and you play a video game and people are complaining that there aren't enough elements of foreign cultures or places, and therefore it's bad. That's always a little frustrating to a lot of people. And it seems like the people that are complaining about all this, they aren't numerous, but there's a few of them, but they're very loud. They call them the loud, very vocal minority, where they don't make up the majority opinion, but they're so loud and given so much attention and credit in any forum, whether you're talking, well, VidCon, look at VidCon. Somebody like Anita Sarkeesian is practically worshipped at VidCon, even though the majority of gamers disagree with many of her opinions and statements on things such as political correctness in games. She views it as a necessity. And you can see the result of that in Uncharted 4, where Neil Druckmann, the creative director of that, said that he's a big fan of Anita's work and tries to emulate a lot of her ideas in his own work, specifically with characters like Nadine, characters like Marlene in The Last of Us, for instance, where he goes and he finds a character and will try to put in a lot more females, a lot of empowered women, and I have no problem with that whatsoever. I think that there's certainly an argument to be made that there should be more women in video games that aren't just a hot rack. With that being said, I think this pig kills me. With that being said, again, the lip sync, I'm not sure what that is. I got to figure that out. I don't know. There's just some delay. It's weird, but it's driving me crazy too. So don't worry. But with all that having been said, I think there is an argument to be made that the empowerment of women is a good thing, perhaps, where you aren't just throwing them in there to be eye candy. And the way that you can always look at this is if you look at the new Ghostbusters, for instance, that movie was all female leads who none of them had any vices whatsoever. They were all geniuses and brilliant. And then all the men were total ditzes in it. And then they're kind of surprised that men are upset about it. Well, that's how a lot of women felt for a long time when they watched action flicks. They might like action movies, but they always felt a little left out because all of the women were ditzes or they were just eye candy. Look at the Transformers movies. You can't argue that Megan Fox is exactly a sharp tack. So with all that said, this isn't meant to get super political or anything. I'm trying to have a reasonable, measured discussion to the point where we can continue it in the comments, of course. And I'd love to hear your thoughts, again, just with reason. I'm trying to throw in all points of view here. So with that in mind, the fact that they're trying to be equitable to many people, I don't have an inherent issue with that. What I do have an issue with is when it's done very lazily and it negatively impacts my hobby or my passion or whatever. So the reason so many people were upset about Ghostbusters, the new Ghostbusters, was because it was a deep-held franchise. Many people grew up watching that. It was very sentimental to them. They cared a lot about it. And then they see the new Ghostbusters, and it was essentially an attempt at a political statement to say, well, look at this, you know, you guys aren't that great. Women can do this too, which is not necessarily a bad message, but it turned a beloved franchise into just a political vessel to make a point. And that's what frustrates people. And when people see The Lost Legacy coming out of Uncharted 4 as DLC or an expansion, technically, they see that and they say, oh, this is just a political statement. This is nothing more than, look, feminism, empowered women, whatever. And they get the impression that that's being held above everything else, and that's the point of the expansion. And I don't think that that's necessarily true, but the fact that we're in such a heated climate right now all over the world, where that's the first thing people think when they see two women heading up an expansion, that's a little unfortunate, but it just means that you have to go and hit the ball way out of the park, to the point where people are saying, have you played The Lost Legacy? It's amazing. And like, the gameplay is so engaging. The graphics are beautiful. They don't even mention the fact that two women lead it up. You have to just not make it an issue, not talk about it. Like in The Last of Us, I thought Marlene was a really crappy character. I thought she was incompetent. I thought she was stupid. But I would have thought that too if she had also been a man. There was no difference between that. Just the character as a character, I thought was an idiot. So with that, you know, you look at Ellie, and Ellie in The Last of Us was an empowered, not to just throw that word out there, but she was a female character who wasn't just a hot rack, but she was also very intelligent. She was capable and competent to the point where she could defend herself and defend Joel. She was a good character. And if she had been a little boy, and instead of, you know, Joel having a daughter, he had a son, and then Ellie is a little boy, that would have been the same exact opinion, just because it's about the characters. So my point of view on political correctness in gaming specifically is that I don't care what you do. even if you're trying to be politically correct or politically incorrect actively. But the second that it impacts my experience with your game, you have to realize that I'm going to call it, I'm going to talk about it, I'm going to address it, even if that might be seen as uncouth or as a bad thing, because I'm calling it out for what it is, which is a poorly developed character or a stupid character or a poor design choice. As for your specific example of Call of Duty World War II, saying that Hitler's, quote, probably going to end up as a Brazilian bisexual, gender fluid, transgender that identifies as a Fuhrer, and how they censored swastikas to be an Iron Cross. This is an unfortunate reality in many ways of doing global game development. If you look at the Saboteur, for instance, the Saboteur ran into many of the same issues. I thought it was a good game, but in Germany, in the German release, at first it wasn't going to release there at all, but in order to release, they had to go through all of the game. And on just the German version, they went through and they wiped out all of the swastikas, all of the Nazi imagery, which is hard to do in a game all about Nazi Germany, or not Nazi Germany, but like Nazi occupied France. And so all of the swastika banners and everything were just white textures. So it's an unfortunate reality because many cultures, many countries are very, very sensitive, and they have their own rules against certain things. I can think they're stupid. As an American, I think those rules are stupid, rather. Not that those people are stupid necessarily, but that the rules are stupid. And I'm sure those people are saying, well, he's just an American, he's whatever. And that's fine. I don't really care that much, but it's just an unfortunate reality. Now, when I have an issue with it is when it impacts my version of the game. Just like if I'm sure it would upset some people in Germany if the full version was shipped there, it would upset them. If that censored version was shipped to the US, I would be frustrated as well and upset. Just because I personally don't like my content censored. We're in the age of the internet. I don't think you should be censoring much of anything. And it's very hard to censor a lot of stuff on the internet, which is one of the reasons for that belief. But overall, I think we live in an age where they're going to do crap like that. And if it really bugs you, don't buy it, and they'll learn their lesson. They'll only do this as long as they can get away with it. And if they can get away with it, then they're going to keep doing it. And in this case, they can get away with it because so many people will still buy the game. Millions and millions and millions and millions of copies. So if it really bugs you, then just vote with your wallet. Don't buy it. And it might not have an impact on Call of Duty World War II, but in 3 more releases and sequels, eventually everyone else might be on your side, having seen you demonstrate your moral opinion or your consumer or informed consumer opinion, and be inspired by that and do the same thing. And if that's the case, then you know you got what you needed, you got what you wanted, and I have no real I think that that's just a reasonable thing. I think that makes a lot of sense. And so yeah, that would be my personal advice with that. Moving on to our second main question. This also came off of the Discord, and it's specifically, LukiePoo, could you talk about how to make a successful villain in a video game without resorting to over the top character design? Now, this is a question that goes way above my stature and my position. I tend to talk about gameplay. I try to talk about story when I can, but I am by no means a literary, an informed, whatever the word would be, literary advocate. I don't know what it would be, whatever the term would be. I'm not somebody who spends a lot of time analyzing and studying story arcs and all of that. But what I can say about villains is there's a very, very fine line dividing cringy and scary. Very thin line. Because you see so many, like, look up cringe compilations of people on Halloween where you see all these people trying to be the Joker, and it's just cringy. Why is it cringy? Well, because they didn't cross that thin line. They might be right up against it, but for a lot of people, for instance, Jared Leto in Suicide Squad, he was, for some people, he just barely passed it and he was scary. Other people, he just barely missed it and he was just cringy. And then you get somebody like Heath Ledger who bounds across it, and all of a sudden it's like, I can't even imagine that being cringy. He's just scary. He did a good job. And to find a way to cross that, you need a very talented actor. You need, more than that, an incredibly good script that works. And unfortunately, a lot of video game developers, they can try too hard. I think a lot of the time that's the issue, where they just simply try too hard. And when you try too hard, cringe will inevitably come fluming out of your writing. And that's really an unfortunate thing. What just happened on screen here is that character that Nikki was playing at that point. Whenever her insanity gets low, she lights things on fire. And so she lit our chest on fire that had all of our stuff inside of it. And it was just wonderful. So anyway, so that's like my basic thoughts on it. I think there's a fine line between cringe and scary. And you need a good writer and you need a good actor in order to pull that off. One of the things I'm most happy about is the fact that we are bringing back, or not, well, perhaps not back, but we're bringing in talented actors to lead up the role playing of these games. You can see it in basically every major title that's released. We're using motion capture. We're basically bringing film to gaming and employing it. And I think it's great. I think it improves the performances overall, whatever game you're talking about. And I just think it's great. So I'm happy about that. But yeah, good question about character design and everything. It's a bit above my pay grade, but it's an interesting topic nonetheless. Next question, LukiePoo, maybe instead of doing Lukie versus Bethesda as a video, make a LukiePoo versus Sony comparison, etc. with Microsoft as well, pointing out all the anti-consumer moves of the biggest names in gaming and starting it with Sony and Microsoft to avoid console wars in the comments. Well, this is not a bad idea, certainly. I think one of the things to note about this idea is that I mean, obviously I was going to do the LukiePoo versus Bethesda game or video, and I probably still will at some point in the near future. It's just a matter of sitting down and doing it. A lot of these videos just take me so long to do. I'm probably going to start scheduling it where I do like a game critique every other week, and then I do another video talking about like game design in some capacity in the week in between, just to give myself, so I'm not rushing through games, so I don't feel like I need to rush through something. I've rushed 2 videos probably at this point, at some point in the development of those videos, specifically the Blood and Wine critique I did, and the Last of Us video. I think a lot of people just didn't like the way that one was structured. I did it more as a commentary, talking throughout. I think they expected it more to be just 2 hours of talking about game design. Could have done that. I thought that would get boring, but apparently some people much preferred that style. So I don't know. I think just more time, more effort is probably where they need to go. And that just, again, takes time. So we're going to have to space that out. But specifically with this idea of looking at the anti-consumer policies of a lot of these game devs, I think it is important to call out these game devs for a lot of policies that they have that are very, very anti-consumer, that a lot of people seem to turn a blind eye at. One of the big companies that gets a complete pass, that drives me crazy, is Nintendo. Nintendo with the Switch. I love the Switch. I have actually been, my guilty pleasure playing something new about LukiePoo. I will sit in bed when I'm getting ready to fall asleep, and it's like my cool down. I will sit in bed, just trying to turn the brightness up. My goodness. I will sit in bed and just like play through some Zelda while watching different documentaries, and that's how I decompress at the end of a long day. And I've put in the last few days, when it got really intense, everything was really tough, I probably put in another 15-20 hours into Zelda, like just all in one go, well, a few goes. But the new DLC is pretty good. It's decent. But yeah, so that's, as for looking at it, the Switch is one, it contains a lot of anti-consumer stuff. Nintendo does a lot of anti-consumer stuff, whether you're talking about the YouTube stuff that they do, or you're talking about their approach to supply. If you're in Europe, if you are in Japan, if you're in Asia, you won't really have a lot of these issues. But in the US, there are significant supply problems with the products. And I know that's like super entitled, first world problem. They don't have, you know, enough Switches in stock for all of my friends to find one, or for people in Colorado to find one. But I think it needs to be said, because Sony doesn't have that issue. Xbox doesn't have that issue. They say that it's because they don't have enough of the chips that they need to develop the console. Apple is buying all of them up because they have a new iPhone coming out later this year, which makes sense, and that's true. That just means your total capacity is smaller. But where they're shipping them also tells a story, and they are not shipping hardly any to the US, which is their largest market. Despite them being a Japanese company, they still send the majority of Switches and content to Japan. Now, that might be a long-term business idea, because specifically we're talking about a company that is currently relying on a lot of basically updated or remasters or republications and re-releases of older games, a lot of which are very Japanese games, and so those games are probably going to appeal more to a Japanese audience. So they're thinking, maybe if we release more or give more Switches to people in Japan, then we'll get more software sales in the first 6 months, and then we'll go and we'll start shipping to the US once we get some other big titles that US customers are going to be interested in. Maybe that's what they're saying, and that's a justification, or maybe it's not. Maybe it is honestly just a matter of, you know, well, we're a Japanese company, we provide to Japan first. I have no problem with that, but I thought I'd throw it out there. I mean, going and talking with some of these GameStop employees, some of the Target employees, wherever you're talking about, hearing them talk and discuss the shortages that people or that they're having in the US specifically is really, really interesting. And I'm not really sure what to make of it. I'm sure there's something to make of it, but it's just weird. They don't ship to the US for some reason. But with that said, it could be interesting, you know, calling out Sony, Microsoft is doing a very, very good job recently, whether you're talking about their rental system for past games, Game Pass, all that, or you're talking about the fact that there's really no exclusives for the Xbox One X or Xbox in general. That's very pro-consumer. I think it doesn't make business sense, because you're competing against a company that is the just complete opposite. I mean, you're talking about timed exclusivity of 30 days for whatever, oh crap, what was it? Call of Duty 4 remastered or whatever. I think that's the one that's getting 30 days limited exclusivity, where it's just like, at what point, like, that doesn't even do anything. What are you doing? Why do you need 30 days of timed exclusivity just to say that you can? Do you just have that much cash sitting around that you're like, hey, let's just pay them for a month? Why not? Just so we can keep it on the PS4. And maybe that's what they're doing. I don't know. But when you're competing against a company that's doing that type of thing, you have to play by their rules, especially when they're, or specifically rather, when they're leading the charge and they have all the money. They have all the cards. They have like 2/3 of that particular console market, twice as many PS4s sold as Xbox Ones, and it just doesn't make much business sense to do it the way Xbox is doing it. But I'm sure they have their reasons, and those will become apparent shortly. But I mean, Sony, you could argue that the fact that they're so reliant on exclusives is anti-consumer. You could make that argument. You could also say that if it weren't for the fact that these games are exclusive, they would never get made, because Sony would have no incentive to really pay them to publish or to develop, and then they publish the games, whether you're talking about a game like No Man's Sky, or you're talking about another PS4 exclusive like the Naughty Dog titles, or Bloodborne, or Until Dawn, these types of games. So there's a lot to be said for them, but that's just an interesting tidbit. I'm trying to figure out where we're looking at right now in terms of time, just because I don't have a timer right now. And as I said, I have to go out of town, which is why this is pre-recorded with terrible lip syncing. I'm very sorry. I'm honestly not sure. I hope I can still return this camera if I can, because this has caused me issues. This lip syncing is not very good, and it's driving me a little crazy. There's just a little bit of latency, like 100 milliseconds, 200 milliseconds. It's weird, but it's noticeable, especially once I call it out. I'm sorry if I called it out and I keep bringing it up, but it's distracting me as well. As for other stuff to talk about, I'm sure there would be other things we'd bring up if we were doing this live, and I'd answer some live questions to fill it out. As for the future of the channel, I will be doing something with Carrick from ACG in the near future, most likely. We had a great time with Mr. Matty Plays on the last episode of Talk Gaming. Those types of guest type episodes of Talk Gaming will happen again in the future, where we'll do an interview, we'll sit down, we'll take your questions and talk to them about it. But these solo episodes will also still continue as well. As for the upload schedule of videos in between that, it's up in the air, but the big thing is I just don't want to rush these videos anymore. I just, when I rush the stuff, it's low quality, it's not as good as it could have been, and it frustrates me because I'm putting out something I'm not as proud of as previous things I've put out. But at the same time, I feel like I need to put content out. So I think there's going to be a slight shift in how I approach the channel, just because when I'm approaching it like a full-time job, I can pump out a lot of content. The problem is when I approach like a full-time job, I feel like I need to be getting one big video out a week and one Talk Gaming episode out a week minimum. And when I do that, I end up rushing through. I'm only one dude, and to play through, you know, The Last of Us and Hollow Knight and Black Flag and BioShock Infinite all in 2 weeks, I don't think you can give those games justice while doing that. Or do those games justice while doing it. So I'm going to try to give them more time. I'm going to try to give them the time of day and take my time with it. So if the uploads seem a little more stretched out, that's why. I'm trying to make better and better content with your input as well. And so I'll still be putting stuff out, but I'm going to try to take my time with it so I can put stuff out that I'm really proud of and that you can be proud of as well. But that's about all I have. I have to go pretty soon to take care of this family matter, as I said. Again, I really do apologize for not being able to do this live. It's been a tough couple of weeks. It's just the nature of it, and I'm sorry for all of that. But we're moving on. We're moving towards the future. In 2 weeks, I'm sure everything's going to be exactly back to normal, and we're not going to have any issues, and everything's going to be okay. But until then, we got some work to do, and that's what we're looking at. I hope you are having a great day. I hope you have had a great week, and that you will continue to have a great day and a great week as we go forward. Let me know all of your thoughts on these topics down below. Thank you to those of you in the Discord who shared these ideas and questions. Again, links to all of the big stuff up there. We're going to be streaming on Twitch again pretty regularly here pretty soon. I just have to figure out what the hell is wrong with this lip sync. There's probably some box I just checked, and once I fix it, it'll be fine. But that's where we're at. Thank you all for watching, honestly and truly. I do love each and every single one of you, especially after this week. It really does mean a lot to me that you're all still here, that you're all sticking it out, and that we can just continue to move forward. So thank you all. I love you all, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.